All right, so we're gonna do something a little unconventional today. This is coming off the heels of having probably the most mid Mexican food I've ever had, and my friend, who we'll refer to as DX Beans here, or Diagnosed Beans, say hi.
Hello.
So basically, here's the deal. I was catching up with a local comrade, DX Beans, and they started talking to me about cybersecurity and privacy, and basically like how communists really shouldn't be using like iPhones, and they need to be a lot more careful. And we've talked about this on the show before when it comes to like OPSEC, operational security, and all that kind of stuff. So I figured, why not record this conversation? Right. So forgive the audio quality. I'm using a portable mic that I have to move around, so it is what it is. And we're just gonna kind of get into this. So I guess another way we can kind of look at this is like DX Beans is trying to convince me not to use an iPhone anymore. You know, the ultimate catalyst. What separates a communist and a capitalist is iPhone. So, yeah, tell me why I shouldn't use an iPhone.
Okay, so essentially, especially with new iPhones, it's basically just spyware. Your iPhone, especially the 16, will be able to see whatever you're doing. Um, the AI that's a part of the software will be like reading and sending back to Apple whatever you're looking at, and it's going to track your eye movements, so it's like able to tell what you're actually looking at on your screen and what's like taking up most of your time.
So, where did you get like a lot of this information that you were talking to me about?
I've gotten a lot of this information just in other places on the internet. Reddit's a really big one. Just getting into cybersecurity, I thought it was going to be one of those like 2 week, like, oh, I'm really excited about this. I'm going to like buy something. And
It was gonna be your new fixation,
it,
and it became more than that.
it like changed the way
Ah,
that my brain works.
yeah. All right. So, how about you paint me the picture of like how you started down this rabbit hole, how we've ended up having this conversation.
So I wanted to start just like securing my internet space at home a little bit better because at home you really don't have any security if you haven't done anything. Like, have you changed the password on your router?
As in like when I took it out of the box,
Yeah.
or I'm not gonna answer that question.
So, um, your ISP, your internet service provider, has all of that information, and they're also in bed with all of the alphabet boys. So any government entities, three-letter organizations, has your router password.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of like, as I'm having this conversation, like thinking about the Alphabet Soup Boys like outside of my house right now, like in a van, and they're like, you know that meme where they throw their headphones off and they're like, God
Wash the dog. Gotta wash the dog.
damn it! Jeez Louise. Okay, so the cops are seeing what I'm getting freaky deaky on.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh huh.
Um, your internet service provider sees everything. The
Mm-hmm.
moment that you go onto the internet and even just try to type in, even if you did like google.com, um, your router will connect to your internet service provider through like DNS. Google's like a pretty frequented website, so they'll probably have it like in just like stored. But if they can't find out the IP address of the website that you're looking for because your phone like doesn't have that, it will just keep going, and it's a crazy thing that's like way too much to get into, like the specifics of like DNS and like how networking like
Listen, I got the
works.
time, so if you whatever you got to say it.
Dude, it's like a giant ass rabbit hole, which is just like so hard to explain because it all like nestles into each other.
Ah.
It's shit that like I I look up things and there are people in the comments that are like, I've been in cybersecurity for like 20 fucking years and I never understood what this meant. Thanks for like clarifying it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like a rapidly expanding, very lawless area. If you think about it, there are so many like laws and rules for everything, like regardless of if they're actually like followed. Like there are rules of engagement for like physical wars and shit like that. But there's nothing like that for the internet.
So it really is like a Wild West type of situation.
It is as comrades. Actually, I don't really agree that it's more so than just any other person that's using their phone, but the threat model that we would be most concerned about, which is like government adversaries and state actors and shit like that, they have basically unlimited resources about everything and anybody
Yeah.
if you don't take the steps to limit that. And even then, it's not really something that's 100% foolproof. Like, the FBI has literally admitted that one of the ways that they find a lot of people committing crimes, like on the internet, is by digging through their fucking garbage
Mm-hmm.
to like find packages and shit that they have received going in and out. It's a really fucking like crazy, crazy, crazy thing. iPhones, definitely the newer iPhones are like a very big no no, but even your Google phone, like Androids, all of that information is with Google.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this before on various collective works and in our OBSEC package that you have to keep in mind that even obviously through this medium this conversation is being recorded, but it's also not just being recorded by us, it's being recorded by the Alphabet Boys. And I don't think a lot of people really realize that, which is why, like, especially in Discord, I was just asked, someone just asked me some advice for like a Discord, like how do you like moderate it and that kind of stuff, a comrade. And I was basically like, you gotta like make sure that when people say shit, like you cannot have that on there, especially Discord specifically, because Discord will give its information to the government very easily. People have, I mean, we meme on it, but like when all those fucking right wingers are getting in trouble for selling or posting like battle plans in like NATO battle plans in the Ukraine war right now because they wanted to own each other, like Discord's surrendering all that information and recorded conversation too, like voice chats. Those things are they're made into transcripts and they're stored. So it might not be necessarily something that you're saying today now that will get could get you in trouble. But it's something that can be dug up if they're deciding to look at you. Go
I
ahead.
actually RIP to everybody, but I'm gonna like switch between data and data because
Okay.
your laws are temporary, but data is forever. And a really great example I think of this is the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Hmm.
And the fact that people were talking about how you can't use certain period apps anymore. The apps that are on your phone, and most of them that are free, like if something is free and someone is spending that time to develop an app and like put it out there and like get all the certificates and blah 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 blah, you are the product. No one is just putting something out there for your enjoyment. Actually, I don't want to say nobody. That's like a
I was
really
gonna say,
big
I'm like, we do our stuff for free, but
yes. I like most like app developers and things that you're gonna find like in the Google Play Store or
Mhm.
in like the Apple
Apple Store.
Apple Store.
Yeah, yeah,
If it's free, you are the product.
yeah.
It's mining all of your data, all of this shit. So before the overturn of Roe v. Wade, tracking your period on any of these apps was not a huge thing. If anything, it actually helped people to have this information in a really great way to be able to know when to like buy necessities if you're trying to like start a family, all that fun crap. All of that data is stored because the app shares it with third parties, and those third parties are the Alphabet Boys, whether they're like saying that they are or they're just a shell company that's like buying up all this data. And now every single person that has used one of those apps in a state where your rights are not very protected, the government knows your fucking period. uh, they know your menstrual cycle,
Right.
and they're going to be able to tell if maybe you stop buying tampons or if you start like googling certain things around a certain time. Um, and that does sound like a little paranoid and weird, but
But it's not. It's not paranoid and it's not weird because when it comes to anybody who is agitating and in any way against the status quo or the state, we know that the government has done things historically that um, invade people's privacy in order to procure information. I mean, we saw this with COINTELPRO. We see it with phones being tapped, people's mails being looked at, actual stalking, photographic tracking, and not to say that like I am anybody really of worth in the sense of like an agitator, but like I've thought about that when I leave my house, and I'm like, I wonder if anyone really is watching what I'm doing. But I don't even really have to wonder if anyone's watching because, like any good comrade, I have a security system, and you have to, and it really becomes a sort of situation where it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if I ever have to defend myself in court in some kind of situation, then that happens in my home, then I have evidence, but at the same time, I now have literally eyes that maybe in that moment no one's looking, but all that information is being stored. All that information is going
yeah,
back to servers.
it's all there in just indefinitely forever. And when the time comes where they're looking at you a little bit more seriously, no matter who it is, they have all of that information. There was even I was watching a video somewhere, and there was someone from an Israeli intelligence agency that talked about the fact that they will look for more radical people like on the internet in their early teen years.
Hmm.
So they're monitoring children. They're watching what people are doing, what they're looking up, their opinions, thoughts, feelings on the world, because it is a lot easier to build a profile on someone when they're 12 years old, like talking their shit on the internet, than when they're like 20 and they start learning about cybersecurity and building like that OPSEC and all of that stuff that makes it harder for them to identify. Because once they're in, they're like in, and it's really difficult to like boot them out.
Right. So kind of walk me down the rabbit hole a little bit more with like your personal you know situation to this, because I remember you and I were joking when you were like, I'm gonna get an Android, and I was like, oh no, no more blue text, and then you actually got an Android, and now you've gone down this sort of plethora of information that I think really needs to be shared. So what besides the new iPhone, I hear you on that, but why specifically the jump from the previous iPhone you had to an Android that you already are saying isn't even like the most safe alternative?
So the Android is a lot more customizable than the iPhone.
Sponsored by Android.
Google pay me.
Thanks, YouTube. No, jokes aside, go on, go on.
um, but like going back to DNS, which is how your phone or computer or whatever you're on that is able to access all of the IP addresses on the internet and find them and like be able to pull up a website. Uh, you can change your DNS server on an Android. So personally, I have mine on Quad9, and instead of having a like list of okay, I or like my IP address of my phone has tried to go to these websites, um it kind of is a huge blob of just noise of every single person that uses that DNS server, and it makes it really hard to figure out like who is actually doing things. um because it's insane what they can find out just by like observing. There was actually an assassination. I forget who it was. But it was definitely I'm not gonna remember the name, but it was a
Okay.
Lebanese prime minister who had resigned and then was very quickly assassinated. And a few people like called in and were like, "Yeah, I'm a part of like blah 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 group," and I'm like a suicide bomber, and I did this. And it was really quickly found out that Hezbollah, even though they took no responsibility, was actually like behind the whole thing. And the way that they did that was absolutely insane. Um, they were able to basically like figure out who everybody was talking to. Um, and they figured out what phones were around while it was happening.
So it's kind of like a situation in like The Dark Knight when they use that fucking machine to scan all the people's phones or whatever
Yeah.
to find Rachel or some shit. I don't remember exactly the scene that happened, but you're basically that's what you're trying to describe. It's
Yes.
a situation where they were able to track down who was talking to who based off of the devices near them, which again
Mhm.
goes back to the beginning that your phones are cops. It also reminds me of what just happened recently in the news. I don't know if you saw where a bunch of pagers in Lebanon exploded all like so suddenly. And it the I'm pretty sure, right? The IOF admitted that like yeah, it was like a targeted attack.
It it was, but that didn't have anything to do like with the internet.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but the point I'm making is like when you considering the implications of like what can be done on the internet
Mhm.
versus the capabilities of what are actually physically like the actual hardware as opposed to software on your device, just how dangerous these things really could be in the hands of a state that is trying to root out resistance. I mean, this fucking iPhone could explode right now.
That's that's honestly very true. There's this doesn't actually like do anything, but um, I forget who the other person was. I feel so bad. I'm very bad with names, but I know that Edward Snowden like had a very small part in this, where they um made a piece of hardware that would go into an iPhone and tell you real time like what was actually working and running. So even if you had your location sharing off, if you had your Bluetooth off, all of these things were still working and transmitting information. And there's like nothing that we can really do about it.
Yeah. I remember when I first started organizing, one of the major rules is whenever whenever you were going to have like, particular meetings or conversations or whatever, that you would not bring any
Mm.
smartwatches or phones or anything like that. For precisely that reason, that you're describing. But yeah, a lot of these devices, if not all of them, are never really truly off. And it was kind of like how you were explaining that like the iPhone needs to be still some kind of on in some kind of capacity in order to know that you're giving it commands. Or even
Mm-hmm.
like when a lot of people have their AI assistant or like Siri activated, and
Mm-hmm.
they just yell at the phone and then the phone wakes up and starts talking to you. That's also another cool little experiment you can do if you ever get your hands on any kind of surplus thermal vision, whatever. If you point your, let's say, apparatus towards devices that emit thermal imaging, you'll see, like on iPhones and stuff, the lights still coming out,
Mm-hmm.
scanning and looking for you, scanning for your face and all that. The smart TVs do it, phones do it. I've seen it on this phone. Um, a cheap way to do it. I mean, it's not cheap, but if you don't have something that's sophisticated, if you have one of those Meta headsets and you put them in like the pass-through mode where it uses the outside cameras and thermal vision or whatever. I think I'm using the word thermal wrong, and I'll correct it in the video if I am. But you can see all the lights coming from devices that are supposed to be either off or not listening to. Oh yeah, yeah. So like specifically my iPhone, like and I'm sure your phone too, has facial recognition. Wow, facial
Mm-hmm.
recognition. If you point it at your face while you're wearing one of those things or one of those, like I said, surplus items, you'll see a blinking light flashing because it's scanning for you all the time.
I heard about that, and that's actually another reason why I got an Android. Because if you go into the developer mode, um, which you don't need to like root your phone for, you can change the scanning settings to where it like won't look for you as much as it can.
Right, right.
Like I don't have any health things, like I don't have it tracking my like heartbeat. It doesn't have facial recognition. I have a password for everything. Um I have password managers. Like it's all very like compact in there, and I've taken away almost every single permission that I can without like just completely destroying the phone. Because Google has a lot of permissions.
Like what? Like, is there anything in particular you don't think people would expect?
It's not so much that it's not expected, it's just the places that it is are kind of hard to believe. Um, Going through, especially in Android, when you look through all of the apps, it's really, really overwhelming because so many of the things that make your phone work are in there. And if you like fuck with things you shouldn't fuck with, you kind of like break your phone and you have to start again. Um, but so many Google, like all of their apps have your like location permissions. Most of them just default have permission for your camera, your microphone. Um, they have like automatic third party like analytics stuff, which your like motion sensor also goes to those third parties. So your phone that's like watching your face and like looking for you to like do certain movements and stuff, everything that you do is being sent to third parties. So they're able to make a very good profile on you of like what your day is like. They can tell where you work, they can tell what really frustrates you, what makes you upset. That affects your algorithm. It's it's just a wild thing and
It's
it
a
takes a
nightmare.
lot of patience. It is. It's a very big nightmare and you just have to like go through and look and disable everything.
Right. So I feel like it's pretty apparent, but like for I guess young, newer comrades, who obviously, well, that's the thing, right? As they're already grown up into this system that has already, labeled them and is already profiling them. So what would you, I guess, what would you more blatantly recommend?
I would recommend something in the middle. There are certain phones that you can get. Uh, in the US, it's kind of weird, which is actually really interesting. The United States is like the continental United States is one of the hardest places to find working phones that um, have a removable battery. Um, so that would be my like biggest recommendation is having a phone with a removable battery.
So what, like, for those who don't know, why is that important?
Because when the battery is out, you can guarantee that there is nothing going on your phone. Like there is no power supply, there is nothing. Like if you try to boot your phone, your bootloader won't work because there's no power to it. So that means that whatever you are doing at that time is like not being tracked by your phone, completely just off the face of the earth until you put your battery in.
Right, right, right.
But it's a really slippery slope because the more advanced with technology that we get, the weirder it looks if you don't have advanced technology. So if you're walking around with like a Nokia brick phone, it looks really suspicious.
Yeah, like it's pretty uncommon now for people to be walking around with, the traditional burners. Now even burner phones, track phones are all smart devices without removable batteries.
Which is absolutely insane. And I think it's also important to talk about like what your burner phone should look like. Your burner phone should have contacts. You should have certain apps on them it is incredibly suspicious to have your phone searched, whether it's a brick phone or like the latest iPhone, and there for there to be like no contacts or nothing on your phone. It just looks weird. It sucks because it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be careful with yourself and with your devices. Um, but have different circles. Because if you get a burner phone for a protest, which a lot of people recommend, which is really great, but it's also a huge double edged sword, um, you have to just be smart with it. Uh, Having that burner phone, calling back to your friends and family who you are normally in contact with, as much as that's really nice, um, that burner phone is now in your loop of people. So if they're really looking for you, okay, well, your phone went offline, right? Like, let's say that your everyday phone has a battery in it and you just like completely dip. And the moment that your everyday phone dips, some random phone starts texting every single person that you normally do. It's really easy to infer that that's you.
And I've also heard that with like key logging technology nowadays and all this monitoring, that it's even getting to the point where they can tell if it's you based off how you're typing, not even the device you're using.
I currently use a third party keyboard. The Google keyboard is absolutely insane. It's honestly been an adjustment because the Google keyboard, while I had it, adjusted to the way that I type, which is very badly, uh, so well that it looks like insane gibberish whenever I type something out the first time, and I have to like go and really like make sure that it's somewhat legible because it just figured out exactly what I meant. Like the absolute like
That's horrifying.
yeah would be like translated into a sentence that you
Yeah,
understand.
that's actually kind of horrifying to really think about. And it's crazy like how much like the laymen, the liberals like don't understand really what has happened. Like I was telling this story at work a while ago. It's a bit of a funny story, but um there's a smart TV in my house. And
Oh no.
um listen, and if I ever talk long enough in Spanish, the commercials that I'll get on like any of the streaming apps or whatever will start being in Spanish. And I brought this up to a coworker of mine, and they were like, "That's so funny," and I'm like, "It's not though, because that means it's actively listening to what I
Yeah.
am saying and what I'm talking about." It reminds me of this video that came out maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, where this guy was testing on the Google Chrome, I think Google Chrome, um, talking about dog food. He talked about dog food for like 15 minutes, and then all his ads on Google were dog food. And it's like, again, it goes back to, it's not even necessary that like oh, we're paranoid. Like, no, the government is listening to every single one of you. It's the companies are
Yep.
to make money off of you. And as we know, as we were talking about earlier off cam, when we were talking about fascism and what fascism means. And one of the things that I define fascism as is the sort of marriage of state and corporate power to continue capitalism, to uphold imperialism. So why wouldn't the government not go to these companies and be like, "Hey, this is a person that we are looking at," or they don't even probably have to explain themselves,
No.
and just be like, "We need the data for DX beans," and they'll just get it, or they'll pay for it, and then that's it.
That it's they mostly like they do pay for it. They don't even really need to ask. Um I mean, there are certain cases where they will subpoena certain things. Personally, that's why I really enjoy the Signal app. Because they not only is it like open source, which is great, but they are very upfront with the subpoenas that they get and with the information that they give back, and it's basically nothing. But so many of like government agencies and state actors will make these little shell companies, these the third party advertising analytics companies, and they will just buy that information from anybody. So like your Angry Birds app and your Sudoku app and probably even the Magic the Gathering app are collecting.
Hear that, nerds?
Yeah. All of your like free game apps are collecting your information and sending them to the government so the government knows what nerd you are.
Mm-hmm. They know that your mom's playing Candy Crush way too long than she's supposed to, and then they know that her son is a radical communist. So
Yeah, yes, they do, which is vile.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just more man-made horrors beyond human comprehension.
And we're giving that away. I was telling you the other day about how Microsoft was deleting people's accounts for using Skype.
Oh, right. So that's the. I'm sorry to get all like the audio just jumped crazy because I got excited, because you were telling me about what happened to your phone, so I wanted to get into that. But talk about Microsoft first.
So Microsoft is doing this thing essentially where every like I forget exactly how many seconds, but it's a ridiculously short amount of seconds. They are taking a screenshot of what you are doing and they just have that
Now,
information.
what do you mean? I don't like. Obviously, you're saying Microsoft, like the company, but is this Microsoft Edge? Is this like what is
Everything.
this? Everything.
So like all any computer or device that is running Microsoft software or that is using hardware that is developed by Microsoft is watching you. It's watching everything that you do, and Microsoft has the ability to go through and look through all of that and determine whether or not they want you to be a customer, be their consumer. And one of the things that they did is there were people that were using Skype, which is a Microsoft
For you youngins,
thing.
Skype was FaceTime before FaceTime.
Rip. Oh God. But they were using Skype to contact family in Palestine, and Microsoft deleted their accounts, which doesn't sound super insane until you think how many emails do you have?
Thousands.
I mean, I have thousands of emails too, but like almost every single person has like one or two emails. Um, and they have everything in their entire life connected to that email, your bank accounts, all of your social media, and losing access to that basically destroys everything for you. Especially because of all of like the authentication like tactics and shit that like we use now. It's hard. Your entire life online is ruined. And it doesn't really matter where you fall on this subject about what these people in particular were doing, which were contacting loved ones. If you don't agree with that, that's sorry. I'd like I heard
They're
it.
coming.
The CIA is coming for us.
This should be a crazy last episode. But then I just send the audio to the Discord and be like, no context.
Post this, please. Um, but regardless of what your stance is on what these people were doing, Microsoft is not held to anything. They're their own company and they can choose if they're going to deactivate your accounts. So while you might agree and be like, yeah, these people were doing something wrong, they should have had their accounts deactivated. What happens when Microsoft doesn't agree with something that you are doing and your accounts are deleted permanently?
It really, again, when I say marriage of state and corporate power, we're now being presented with a situation where a corporation now is more or less dictating what you're doing outside of the bounds of the law, simply because it is their IP, it is their devices that you're using that you pay for. So, the assumption, under capitalism is that you pay for it and that you own it, but clearly clearly that is not the case.
It is not the case at all, which is it's vile, it's gross.
Mm.
And a lot of people are very willing to give up that privacy. Like if you say, "Oh, well, I can like catch people doing bad things on Microsoft's platform if we like surveil you in this way." That sounds appealing, I guess. Like it's one of those things like for the greater good. But Microsoft doesn't actually care what's like good and
Yeah, they
bad.
care about their bottom dollar.
They
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, they're not going to give a single fuck about you.
So tell me what happened with your iPhone.
So my iPhone, I initially started to notice something was wrong when my pictures and videos went missing.
Just like personal ones, or about
Um,
what's happening in Palestine?
Mostly about what's happening in Palestine. Like pictures and videos that are ingrained so deeply into my head because they made me like sob and choke on my own spit. That I know I had saved in my phone. I would go to like reference them and they would be gone. So I was like, that's weird. And the first couple of times it happened, I was like, all right, whatever.
I'm off my meds, right?
Exactly. Like I probably just didn't save it. Doesn't matter. Um, and then my phone started going on SOS mode randomly. And that means that like nothing comes in, nothing comes out. Or nothing comes in, nothing goes out. And if I didn't have Wi-Fi, that was it. I was just in a complete dead zone. I had no way to communicate with anybody, and there was nothing that I could do about it. And then near the end, my keyboard would just randomly start like typing gibberish, and my music would go on and off randomly, and it was just not. It
It's
was
not
not the
chill.
vibe.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I that's what really got me like down this rabbit hole because I was like, wow, my phone is doing some very weird things. What do? And through my rabbit hole, the first thing that I really started learning about was a spyware called Pegasus uh by the NSO group in Israel. They're like an intelligence agency. Um and essentially Pegasus spyware is a zero click installation spyware that will go through like root escalations until it can, without you ever knowing, it will extract your contacts, your call logs, messages, photos, browsing history, your settings, your location, and it will be able to turn on and off your microphone and camera.
Not only when you mentioned your phone being on SOS mode, it not only is it just like horrifying in a sense of like, wow, something's happened to my phone, but with you, what you were just explaining about Pegasus, it makes me think about like, what if, you know, the government or whoever is trying to make look something look like an accident, where my house is on fire. I'm gonna call the fire department, but all of a sudden my phone is on SOS mode, and all my electronic devices aren't working anymore. And now I can't even record anything that's happening to me to be like, look, something's happening to me. Let me send it to the homies. Let me get the evidence out there. You know.
But that's scary, and it's also scary in and of itself that like even if you're not at home alone and your house isn't on fire, if you're out somewhere and your phone is on SOS mode, it's still transmitting your location and all of that to these people. So they can literally do whatever they want to. You are like a sitting duck.
And now I remember what I was gonna say. It kind of makes me think about Cop City again, because we know that the IDF train police all over the United States, and yes, the more visceral, horrifying things that they want to do in Cop City, basically practicing putting down insurgency. What kind of classes or tech is going to be developed or taught there to particular specialists of the empire to be like, we have this new program? that we can spy on our citizens much more effectively.
It's already here. Like we have the same AI facial recognition cameras in New Orleans as they do in the occupied West Bank right now. This is like so doomsday y, and I don't mean this in like there's no hope kind of way, but all of that is here.
Right.
The United States government is just a lot less
Over.
overt about it. Yeah, a lot of people like to talk about what's going on in China and as a surveillance state and all of these like softwares and like ways of just like technology, and we have all of that. We just don't talk about it. It's not a common thing that is spoken about, and that's very carefully crafted. I mean,
Go on. Very carefully crafted.
unlike the dubiously placed things all over.
This is why this is an off-camera conversation.
Rip.
Oh goodness gracious!
But yeah, they have all of that, and they're already using it, and they're just not telling us.
Of course, they there's no need because even with something like the George Floyd uprisings that happened a few years ago, um, for the bourgeois, status quo is the status quo. We haven't really been threatened that much. However, I would say they definitely are recognizing that potential. One with Top
Mhm.
City, and two, I don't know if you saw this. There was a video that the U.S. Like Defense Force or whatever Defense Force military made, where it's basically acknowledging that um like the state of war has changed, and they're
Yes.
gearing. What that video was telling me, and I'll put the link in the description, is they are gearing to learn how to fight domestically.
Hmm.
That is exactly what they're getting ready for.
I 100% agree. Um, so much of what the U.S. military like strategy was and what they were working towards was to quell insurgencies, um, and like any sort of rebellion from like the status quo wherever it be, but like specifically in places like Palestine and Lebanon and like areas like that. Um, and that there were like three major shifts for the United States. Actually, I paused. I'm gonna say two. In like recent years, so a little bit before and definitely after 9/11, that's when we started going from like our military being based towards other nation states to groups. Um, and now we're going back into like the strategy of fighting other nation states, which we are a nation state, like they are, they don't care about us. Um,
Yeah,
we're very rapidly losing our worth to them.
absolutely, and that's what happens when the facade of capitalism is collapsing. So basically, what you're saying is that before 9/11 there was this sort of the military doctrine was to prepare to fight like the Soviets,
Mm-hmm.
large standing armies, and then that kind of went away after 9/11, where they tried to fight, learn how to quell insurgencies, places like in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and now they're kind of going back towards the fighting nation states, but in this case the nation state is like a balkanization kind of scenario,
Mm-hmm.
where large swaths of the country would be in rebellion. And I think you bring up, that's a really good point that you're bringing up, because I think I think when a lot of people picture, revolution in the United States, they think sort of like, this is a bit of a dig, but protracted People's War out in Kansas. Um, but really, it's going to be like when capitalism is falling apart, when the revolutionary time is here, we're going to see balkanization, and not just balkanization in like, oh, random states becoming their own countries, but we're going to see both politicians, military personnel, companies basically picking different sides and different sort of ideologies or different flavors of the same ideology in order to survive. So not only will we see, interstate fighting, intercompany fighting in association with different organizations, but what I'm getting at is that basically it's not going to just be like just the communists and the state. It's going to be communists, Nazis, different states, different corporations. Like it's gonna be hell. I really don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, that I feel like that's a very great. It's one of the only descriptors. Something that's been really interesting to kind of think about and to watch other people kind of like digest is, especially when it comes to like what revolution will look like in the United States, is the fact that the continental United States is so big. And when you kind of compare it to other like revolutionary like acts, and it's going to be like unprecedented.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A full blown balkanization scenario in the U.S. would, the United States is the size of a continent. Not only is a untold humanitarian disaster waiting to happen, and I'm not saying that to like downplay the need for revolution. I'm saying that the bourgeois are not going to let us have power in peace. So that's on them. Um, but balkanization in the United States will affect the entire planet. Economically alone would be a humanitarian disaster, and it also would inspire other revolutionaries all around the world. So I've been saying this, and I said this in the last podcast, I think. I've been saying it over and over again. The next world war will be not only the main the large state actors like Russia, China, United States fighting each other, but revolutions happening all over the world.
Now is so interesting, and I'm really excited to see everything. I mean, that sounds so fun. It's like
Right,
I'm
right.
excited for humanitarian disasters, but
Right.
like we're already having a bunch of humanitarian disasters right now. The if I'm excited to pick up the pieces of everything and to just like for a societal shift and to make that
You're
change.
excited for revolution, and
Yeah,
not just revolution meaning war. Isn't a great like changing in society, changing the way humans interact with each other, how we treat each other.
we treat each other so badly.
Yeah,
It's it's so bad.
yeah. I mean, clearly, that's evident, through anything from like the genocide that's happening in Palestine to the spyware that's on all of our phones, to iPhone users, to exploding pagers in Lebanon. It's a different world than it was 10 years ago. Um, our revolutionary struggle is looking like something completely different and unprecedented. And yeah, it would be it would be really interesting to see in a post-rev society, like our relationship with technology, our relationship with the internet. Would we have something where like there are laws codified into like really protecting people? Would the internet sort of maybe go through a phase where it's less social and more informational? I don't know. That's just something we could speculate.
I really think that the internet has done so much for people. Um, but as a whole, it would need to be reworked because the internet was never made for like, or Actually, I don't know, because the internet wasn't made for privacy and for people to have like the right of their own privacy.
Right.
Um, but in a place where there may or may not be malicious state actors and other people who are driven financially by like just being malicious on the internet. 'Cause if people really didn't have to worry about money, how many scams would go on the internet? How many ransomware attacks would there be if everybody just had their needs met?
How many TikTok or grifters would be out there? Yeah.
Oh my god, it would be such a quiet place.
Yeah, for sure. A
Yeah.
very different place.
But I do think that it's important that we have it, even as just like a safeguard for anything that happens again, because it's the one place where we are able to like communicate across the world no matter what. Like with the internet we literally get like live
Yeah.
4K.
Yeah. I mean, even just the other day when during the podcast, during a live show, Israel attacked Iran, and about 5 minutes after the fact, I was able to get pictures and videos from people in Tehran being like, "This missile just exploded," and now I'm broadcasting it back to the internet, which actually now saying out loud is pretty crazy. That I got some grandpa's video of a missile attack and put it back on my own YouTube channel. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy.
I mean, it's amazing. It's what we need. I I believe that the internet has so much to do with like just the push for global liberation and being able to contact and spread ideas. Because even if it's not like Marxist Leninist ideas or ideals, like we class consciousness is rapidly spreading because of the internet.
Yeah, I mean we've seen
Mhm.
such a massive uptake with just what's happening in Palestine, but we've been going at this now for a bit. So, is there anything in particular you wanna say?
Make sure you turn off your phone at least for a little bit every single night. Your phone is spying on you. Everything is spying on you. Start doing some research. Look into networking. Uh, just figure out how to make yourself and your comrades safe. Because at the end of the day, every organization, um, any operation, any friend group essentially is as strong as its weakest link. So if you're out here with your basic router password and everything very easily surveilled and hackable, your entire Discord is able to be surveilled and hacked. And there's really nothing that anybody can do about it, regardless of how great maybe like a moderator's like obsec is. You know, uh, just go out there and dive into the rabbit hole. Learn, learn, learn. Privacy is so important.
Right, and I'll add that the the real conversations are not happening on Discord or TikTok or YouTube or around these electronic devices. But thank you, Beans, for talking to me. Goodbye.
Bye.